everybody, welcome to another Tech Thursday. Still have to remind myself that we don't do this on a Tuesday anymore. I hope you're all well. Already there's tons and tons of comments here on my screen. So these first few minutes will be me just asking you to let me know that you can hear me and you can see me all right. And I'll try and have a whiz round the comments and see if somebody's saying, yes, David, we can hear you and we can see you. So please do that for me. And yes, welcome to another Tech Thursday. Now, this one is going to be quite a relaxed Tech Thursday. We are going to be talking about some things relating to macro because obviously we made an announcement about the development of a new macro lens. So we're going to talk today a little bit of a refresh on the 60mm macro, the 30mm macro, and also dip in a little bit to the STF-8 Twin Flash as well. But in between, I want to be giving loads of shout outs to all you lovely people that are there watching from wherever you are in the world. Lots of loud and clears, fantastic stuff. That's my first check done. Now, I do want to say I apologize in advance if the gremlins get into the works today, because I was this close to not being set up ready to go because some things were not quite right. So if things are a little bit strange or if the picture goes or the sound goes, I will try and rectify it. So bear with me, but hopefully, fingers crossed, that won't happen. So as the little ticker says down at the bottom, get your questions in the comments. You can ask me questions about macro. You can ask me about the lenses. You can ask me about the flash. You can ask me about anything OMD and OM1 tech-wise, and I'm sure you'll ask me a load of questions that I probably can't answer as well. For example, my favorite macro, for one of my favorite macro photographers, because there are a few in here today, one of my favorite macro photographers, Ethan Beckler's there with the first comment of the evening. Ethan's there. I'm sure Ethan's very excited about our announcement for our 90mm Pro macro lens. And we've also got somebody called Call Me Hawkeye. And if you can shoot like him, I will, who's heading out to shoot some birds as we speak. So fantastic stuff. Loads and loads of people to give some shout outs. The reason why this is quite a relaxed and casual Tech Thursday, not that my Tech Thursdays are not always pretty casual and relaxed, is that tonight is my pack-up evening before I go ahead to help the rest of the UK team set up for the UK photography show in Birmingham, which is going to be happening this weekend and part of next week. So this is kind of I'm relaxing with you all now before I have to turn around and get all this stuff behind me, packed into many bags, along with lots of other different things to head off tomorrow. So let's keep it nice and chilled out and see what we can answer. We've got Francesca's in. Hi, Francesca. You're away from home. Charlie and Dana, I think. Is that Charlie and Dana? Larry in Vermont. Michelle in Lehigh Valley. This is also the bit where I try and pronounce place names that I don't really know how they're said. So I'm sorry if I get it wrong. Big Bend Birding. That's quite a tongue twister. Is in West Texas near Big Bend. So good to have you guys in as well. And of course, Marsha, who looks like has spent some time with Big Bend. Loads of you saying hi. This is fantastic stuff. How many got over 300 people in? This is brilliant. I will do loads of shout outs as we go, but obviously we do want to talk tech. So first things first, I'm going to put my little wobbly overhead camera on so that when I go to that, it's ready to go and show you pretty much what we're going to be looking at today. Oh, let's get my keyboard out of the way. You don't want to see that. And effectively, what we've got here is what we're going to look at today. So I've got myself an OM1 with a 60mm macro lens on there. We've also got the 30mm macro lens as well, and a partially deconstructed STF-8 Twin Flash. So we'll put this together and we'll talk a little bit about how this works as well. I know a couple of you out there have got that flash, so we can have a little chat about that as well. So let's see, first of all, if we have got any questions in the chat that I can pull up. So this is me talking and reading at the same time. Hi to Sherby. Hi to Kevin. Hi to YouTube User. I have to say the most original name I've ever heard is YouTube User, and you're in Baldock, which is not too far away from me, I think, if that's Baldock in Cambridgeshire. We've got Gareth in Devon, Tony, Podgy, Jeff, Kim, tons of you. I'm just trying to scroll through now and find some of your questions. Get some questions in for me. Susie Crow. Woohoo to the new macro. Of course, woohoo to the new macro. Maybe I can sort of talk a little bit about that. There's not a great deal to be said about the announcement for the 90mm macro that you haven't already seen in writing. Obviously, there's no other information that we can give you that's not already been in the announcement, but it is a 90mm macro. We saw a little bit of confusion about the magnification specification. That kind of works together as two words. So in terms of micro four thirds, this is going to be a 2:1 reproduction ratio, which gives you a 35mm equivalent of 4 times magnification, which is fantastic. It's going to be so good. Ethan's rubbing his hands thinking about those jumping spiders and the sand grains as well. So fantastic stuff. Jones, especially interested in this flash. Fantastic. We're going to have a little look at this as well, and we'll see what difference a flash can make to your macro photography. Let's see. We've got Elizabeth from you people live in some fantastically named places. Elizabeth's from Indiana, more specifically from Floyd's Knobs, which is just wonderful. Absolutely fantastic. ZRS Romson bought a TG6. What an amazing little camera, the TG6 is. Main purpose being macro photos. Fantastic stuff. Let's see. Oh, here's a great one. Let's pop this one up. First one up here from Steve Hewitt here in the UK. Loud and clear in mid beds. Steve would like me to confirm the settings to get 250th of a second flash FL700 for macro. So this is a really good question. So if you're going to take the FL700WR, by the way, is my favorite speedlight flash that we have. And if you're going to take single macro shots on here, you put the flash atop the camera, switch the flash on, switch the camera on, then they kind of see each other. And a single shot in either manual or shutter priority is only going to allow you to go as fast as 1/250th of a second. You physically won't be able to go over that. You can turn that dial all you like. It'll max at 1/250th of a second. Now, if you have a silent mode switched on, an electronic shutter, or focus stacking, focus bracketing, high res mode, things like that, the one that takes flash, then there will be a further limit to that speed. So with OMDs, you're looking at a limit of 1/50th of a second with those electronic shutters. And with the OM1, it'll be 1/100th of a second. So Steve, if you're using an electronic shutter mode or one of those computational photography features such as stacking or bracketing, then you will be limited to either 1/50th or 100th of a second, depending on which camera you have. Otherwise, you should be able to get in a single shot with mechanical shutter 1/250th of a second. Vanessa, oh, wrong side. Vanessa's asking, is that my 150 to 400mm in the back? I think it does appear to have your, no, it's got my name on it. Sorry about that. Vanessa, it's not yours, I'm afraid. So close though, so close. Okay. So Robert is asking about focus stacking and bracketing with the STF-8 Flash unit. So we're not specifically going to be looking at focus stacking and bracketing today because we've done quite a lot of that on Tech Thursday and in various other videos. So there is some information on our OM.Camera YouTube channel, the one that you're watching this live on, or not live if you're coming back to see it later, because it is obviously recorded. So there is some more information on doing that. The reason for that is because we have to have several setups of cameras to show you how the focus stacking works due to the feed not going through a HDMI cable when it's doing those modes specifically. So that's quite a complex thing to do. However, I can talk you through parts of it as we go through anyway, and you'll be able to kind of get an idea. And we can point you in the direction of the other videos that do show it as well. This is like quite old videos, actually, from I think early in 2020 at the start of the pandemic, where this setup wasn't quite as pretty as it is now. And I did some focus stacking with the STF-8, so we can have a little look at that for you. Okay, let's have a little look at some of the questions. This one's a good one. Can the camera auto-delete the intermediate pics for in-camera focus stacking? I'm so tired of deleting them in post. I can understand. Unfortunately, it can't auto-delete them in any of the models right now. So if you take a focus stack, then it is going to give you, let's say, for example, you shot 10 shots in your stack. You will get 10 RAWs if you've selected RAW, plus 10 JPEGs, plus a final 21st JPEG that has a crop, so it looks a bit bigger in the frame. And the reason for that is because you may want to do something with the RAWs afterwards, may want to stack them yourself. I'll be honest with you, I don't know why we have all the JPEGs in there as well, because you wouldn't use them as much, but it is something that we feedback a lot. So I definitely appreciate why you wouldn't want to take those over. But at the moment, you can't auto delete those shots from the camera. Okay. Sistema Natura. Macro madness and lighting nightmares. That doesn't sound good. Is that good? I don't know. Macro madness sounds very good. Lighting nightmares, not so much so. Let me know what's going on here. Okay. So Jamie's just got the OM1. And you want me to explain how focus stacking works with the macro lens on this camera? Yeah, of course. So when you switch on focus stacking in the OM1's menu, then the first shot that you take once it's switched on needs to be somewhere around 40% into the depth of your subject. And then it's going to take several shots in front of that, and then the rest of them behind that to create that final stack. And that first shot that's about 40% in is a reference shot. Now, when we'll go back and look at the 60mm macro, it works in the same way if you're using it in a single shot or in a stack or a bracketed shot, in the sense that if you want to reproduce at 1:1 magnification, you really should be thinking about manual focus. And if you want to reproduce at less than 1:1, so 1:2 or 1:4, something like that, then it's more than acceptable to use autofocus. But if you do want 1:1, it really should be a case of putting the lens into manual focus, finding the nearest point that you can get with that, because it's exactly 9 centimeters away from the front of the lens is the closest focusing point for 1:1. And then creeping a bit further out to that 40% before you start your stack. And again, we've got a few videos in the YouTube channel that will show you that. Okay, so let's quickly have a look at another question, and then I'll probably get a camera up here actually, and we'll see. So Christine has asked if we could run through the quickest way to get back from 1:1 to normal on the 60mm lens. Yeah, sure, of course. So ultimately, if you're in 1:1, you're on a limiter switch on the side. Let's go over to my overhead scene here. And in the camera here, we have a limiter switch just on the side here, where you can click the lever, and it doesn't stay there. It's spring loaded. It sort of tilts in and then flicks back, because 1:1 will literally focus at 9 centimeters, and the 0.19 to 0.4 meters starts at 9 centimeters from the front of the element. Sorry. So it kind of does bounce back there, but if you flick it there, then this little line on the indicator window will sit at 1:1. Now, if you're in autofocus, which I'm just going to pop it into now, if you watch that red line here, and you use the autofocus on something that is more than 9 centimeters or less than 9 centimeters away, you'll see that that line is moving around in there, in that window, trying to find something to focus on within the very strict limitations of 9 centimeters from the front to 30 centimeters from the front, which is why I always say if you're going to use the 1:1, you should put your camera into manual focus. Now, the OM1 can go into manual focus quickly by flicking this to the lever position 2 on the back, but some of the rest you'll need to go into the super control panel to do. So now if you halfway press the shutter, this red line is not going to go anywhere, and the camera will be strictly set for 9 centimeters. And I'll show you that right now, actually. So I think what we'll do is I'll hook up a camera, and keep your questions coming in, by the way, of course. Today I'm going to be using a remote cable as well. I'm going to be using the RMCB2 remote cable, just so that I don't have to press the shutter button and kind of move the camera around. I'm going to pop it onto a tripod as well. So let's see. Oh, I tell you what I do need to do. You guys need to see the feed, so I need to plug the cable in. I always said that by the end of this year, I will get myself an assistant. We're nearly at the end of the year and I don't have an assistant. I'm working on it though. It's a very small assistant that's getting very good. So let's see if we can fix this up here and cross this over. Okay, so we're going to keep Christine's message up there, because this is pretty much what we're going to be talking about in terms of it shooting 1:1. This is going to be the 60mm macro. I'm just going to turn my microphone around a little bit. So we're on the 60mm macro. Let's straighten this up. Now let's get a little bit of extra light on here. And I'm going to be shooting at some really slow shutter speeds on here purposely to show you that sometimes you do need a flash. Okay, so camera is in manual mode. So in manual mode on a reset camera, it is automatically coming. I'm just going to pop Christine's question down. It is automatically going to go into 1/250th of a second at f5.6. Now, crazy, f5.6, my favorite aperture on this 60mm macro lens for sharpness. Now I can go faster or I can go slower. But first of all, I'm going to set my ISO. Okay, I'm going to set it fairly high as well. So I'm just going to press my ISO button and twist my front dial. This is OM1, by the way, and I'm going to set it at 3200 because, believe it or not, it's actually quite dark in my studio, and I've not got any LED lights to light this purposely because we're moving on to using flash for that very reason. So even at 100th of a second, I'm not going to get a decent shot. So I need to bring this all the way down. And it's going to go quite slow. So if I want to get my, what I like to shoot at is plus 0.3 of a stop overexposed, just to give it a little pop. I'm down at 1/3 of a second. That's fine because I'm on a tripod. And I've tilted the 1-to-1 switch and I've put the camera into manual focus. Okay, so what I could do now is I could either turn the manual focus ring, but that would take me away from 1-to-1. So for example, I'm just going to put this over here. It's definitely outside of 9 centimeters. If I now turn my manual focus ring to bring my subject into focus, this is fantastic, but the top of my lens tells me that I'm at 1-to-2. So that's not where I want to be. So I'm going to flick that limiter switch back to 1-to-1, and I'm going to move this crusty old feather, because crusty old feathers take great photos. I'm going to move that closer just until it comes into focus. Now, the very section of this feather that is now in focus is precisely 9 centimeters from the front element and is reproducing at 1-to-1. So let's take a shot here and have a little look at that extremely narrow depth of field because we are in macro shooting. But there's our detail that we can get, and that very fine depth of field at exactly 1-to-1 and exactly 9 centimeters away from the lens. Now, if you want to come out of 1-to-1, the quickest way to do that is to come out of manual focus. And the way that I'll do that is to switch my lever position on the rear of the camera to position 2. It's now in autofocus. I will move my subject more than 9 centimeters away, but within 30 centimeters from the end of the front element, and then just use either my AF on or my shutter halfway press to find that focus. It will very quickly autofocus on that now, and I can move my focus around to different places and it will still autofocus very quickly as long as my subject is within 9 centimeters to 30 centimeters. Okay, and this is very bright, so we can actually speed the shutter up a little bit, and we can take another shot. And obviously this is going to result in getting slightly more depth of field because the subject's further away. So the further away it is, the more depth of field we'll get with the same aperture rating. And there we go, you get nice detail in your feathers. Now the problem with this is that it is very flat light, and you're only going to be subjected to a certain amount of shadows and range and tone and things like that. So that's when you would want to try and then introduce some flash, which we will come on to. So Christine, hopefully that gives you an idea that you can go from manual focus, which sets you at 1-to-1, 9 centimeters, flick a lever on the back. If you've got an OM1, you can do this with OMDs as well, providing that you program the back lever to be the AF to MF switch, and then make sure that you're within 9 centimeters to 30 centimeters range, and it will get everything up to 1-to-3 ratio. Now, of course, you can focus further away, but then you need to turn the switch on the limiter to the next step, which would be 0.19 meters, which is still 9 centimeters from the front of the element, to infinity and beyond. Or you can switch it to the next step and it'll be 0.4 meters to infinity. So you have that quick access there. But just remember, go from manual focus to 1-to-1, autofocus for everything else. We'll come on, we'll have a little look at the 30mm in a second. So I'm just going to go through some more questions as well. Let's see. Oh, Emily's in. Emily can't wait for the macro. I know. Got my eye on your Instagram, Emily. That's what I'm doing at the moment. Be exciting to see what you can do with that lens when it comes out. Ray's bought the Twin Flash but can't find it. Ray, you need to go digging through some drawers, empty some boxes, get a flash detector, sniff a dog. You need to find that flash because it is really, really useful. I'll show you why when we come around to it. Hey, Roger. Roger's in the UK. Roger's a very familiar customer to me. Hope you're all right. Has the STF-8, but not used it much. Oh, well, we're coming into kind of like autumn soon, and then winter. There'll be sort of fungus around and things like that. And as things die off, they make interesting subject matter as well. So you should definitely get out with that as well. So many comments. This is fantastic. What are we up to? 362 viewers. You're all fantastic. Hey, Margot. Hope you're well as well. Good to see you. The Macroverse. Hello from Denmark. Hello. Rolf, why don't you broadcast in 4K? That's a good question, Rolf. Why don't I broadcast in 4K? Oh, yeah, because I've got so many things going on. My poorly little village broadband wouldn't be able to handle it. And that's why, because I live out in the middle of nowhere. We don't have 1,000 gigabyte broadband speed, so I have to make everything 1080. So you should be able to see me at 1080. That's filming 1080, and it should all go through to you at 1080. And also, I'm not going to lie, 4K, I don't look great in 4K. And, you know, so I think you're better off seeing this in 1080, for sure. Tim's just got the 60mm. Oh, it's such a great lens. There are so many things that you can do with it, Tim. Annette's in Sweden. Hello, Annette. Good to see you, as always. And Jim, can't wait for the 90mm macro. All of us, I think, are pretty much thinking about that one. All right. Okay, here we go. So David's asking a question about the STF-8 with through focus. There is a pause between each shot that requires the use of a tripod. Yes, absolutely. Even with very fast flash speed lights, things like that, things that have a really quick recycle, it's very difficult to do handheld focus stacking unless you're only doing small numbers of shots. So you do when you're using the STF-8 twin head flash for macro stacking, you will need to use a tripod. Yeah, that's basically it, David. This is a great question from Charlie, and I hope I'm saying it right. I'm either saying Charlie and Dana or Charlie and Dana. What are the advantages of flash versus LED lighting like the Lighter Cubes? Well, LED lighting is great. It's absolutely fantastic. It gives you a very limited amount of output, though. So if you need more output, you need brighter light, flash is the way to go. And in particular with the STF-8, it's mounted on the front of the camera, so it makes it really easy to kind of adjust what direction it's kind of flowing in and things like that. But it's different styles of lighting for different jobs, and LED lighting is just as good if that's what you want to use to kind of move it around and get the sort of shadows and lighting where you want them to be as well. My personal preference would probably always be for flash, because then I can get much brighter output from it. The Macroverse using 2 FL700 WRs for most of your macro work. I can definitely get on board with that. Yeah, I use 2 in a studio setup, 1 with a diffuser, which is somewhere over here. Yeah, 1 with a diffuser when I'm out and about. And the STF-8 is the one that really comes in handy when I'm crawling underneath bushes, when my big flash and my diffuser can't get in because it kind of creates this thing on top of the camera. And the STF-8 is really good for getting into small places, and because it's weather sealed as well, it means I can go out early in the morning if there's dew, water, rain anywhere in the sort of bushes and trees that I'm creeping through looking very strange to the rest of the villagers, then the flash is absolutely fine in those kind of conditions. I think we solved Steve's issue. It must be an electronic shutter that's stopping you from getting 1/250th of a second. Here's somebody I haven't seen in a long time, Mr. Stevenson, Tom Stevenson, Dave. Hi, Dave. Tom. Hello, Tom. Tom's here in the UK. It's great to see you in, Tom. Thank you for joining us. Sherby. Hello, Sherby. Yes, this flash is compatible with your OMD EM1 Mark II. It's compatible with all OMDs and the OM1 as well. Sistema Naturis has brought up a good point. The way to get over the restriction on the shutter speed is to use LED lighting. Absolutely. You've just got to be aware of that output, that brightness that you're going to be limited to. But yes, you can do it both ways. Absolutely. And also just be aware certain LED lighting giving off kind of like a pulse or a flicker or a banding as well. You just need to be aware of that one. Okay, right. So I'll tell you what I'm going to do now is I am going to whip some cables out. We're going to bring the camera back over. In fact, actually, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to show you the 30mm here. So let me clear some space. There we go. That was probably nice and loud for all of you. This is my remote release cable, so ignore that for the time being. And this is the 30mm macro. Now, this is quite an astounding lens on its own as well. There are some things that you need to know about the 30mm in terms of the shooting distance. So if you want to shoot insects with this one, you want to shoot very sort of placid, non-flighty kind of insects, because you do need to get super close. Now, the focusing distance on this lens is about 1 centimeter from the front element. It's really, really close, which is why this lens is super suited to the STF-8 Macro Flash, because as the lens is sitting here as such, rolling around on my desk, then the flash is coming in and firing light right in front of the lens. So it's very, very close, and you can maintain all of those details and things like that. So it's superb for that. In particular, I use the 30mm macro lens for textures. So things like barks, flowers, trees, leaves, things like that, textiles. This is really, really good for that kind of thing. And the front filter for this and the 60mm are the same. So when it comes to fitting the STF-8 adapter ring, they're both exactly the same. So it's one adapter ring for both lenses, which is absolutely fantastic. Okay, so let's put that there. Let's bring the 60mm macro over on the camera. And then we're going to make sure you're going to change lenses, switch your camera off. We're going to take the 60mm off, and we will pop on the 30mm macro just there. And then we'll pop this back on there. I'm just going to pop that there so you've got something to look at while I change things over. And then I'm going to pop my cable back into the OM1, if I can reach it. The benefits of doing all this on my own. Here we go. Fantastic stuff. Okay, so we're going to get a slightly different view. This is going to be a much wider view now. It's all out of focus, but what you'll notice is that there is lots more going on over here because the 30mm is much wider view. Now, I've left this in autofocus because the 30 is such an amazing lens. You don't need to manually focus with it because it's going to focus right here, right in front. Okay, so let's focus over there. This is our feather. I'm going to bring my little blue background in as well, just so that it kind of fills the space as we go. And I'm bringing this super, super close, super, super close. Okay, I'm about an inch away now. Nice quick focus on autofocus. Let's go about half an inch away. Fantastic stuff. Let's push this a little bit more. See how close we can get. So I'm now 1/3 of an inch, super close. But you can see how dark this has now become, how much light I've now blocked out because of that super, super close focusing. Now, I can probably get even a little bit closer. Let's just see if we can do this. Have I pushed it too much? Oh, no, just about. We just about got there. Now, you can see it's very dark. I could slow the shutter speed down even further to take that shot. But at this stage, you want to be thinking about now adding light into there. You could indeed open up the aperture a little bit more, but then you're going to really thin out that depth of field. And is that really what you want to do? So you've kind of got to weigh things up now. This is where you kind of think about your compromise when it comes to macro photography and things like that. But this is our kind of very close. It's just about 1 centimeter away from the front element of the lens. Okay, so with that in mind, let's bring in the STF-8 flash. Okay, so I'm going to pop an STF-8 on my overhead camera here. There we go. And then I'm going to bring the camera over. Let's just pop the cable and try not to drop it because I had to reach over for that just a second ago. I'm going to close my camera down and I'm going to switch it off. Let's have a look how all of this is going to go together with this. Okay, so when you get the flash, let's take the camera out of the situation to start off with, you will get all in one piece the command unit, the cords, and the two heads A and B, thing A, thing B, and they're all part and parcel of one piece. You'll then get these plastic diffusers. They will be held on by some little black thread so that if you pop them off, you don't lose them. Mine are not. Well, that's a story for a different time as to why they're not attached on there, but they will go back on. And then you'll also get either this ring here, which will fit the 60mm or the 30mm macro, or you get a slightly bigger ring in the kit as well that does fit the 12 to 40, and then obviously the f1.2 lenses as well, because they're the same filter thread as that, which is 62mm. But this one is going to go, this is a 46mm. It's going to go onto your 60 on your 30. Now, it doesn't come with these side clip pieces attached. What I have done is I've put these on ahead of time. I am going to take one off slightly just to show you that they very delicately kind of screw on, because they go round it like it goes around it like a Stargate. It kind of clamps on, but it will fit onto here, and then you've just got to tighten up the mechanism just enough for it to grip. Okay, and once it grips, there are two press buttons on this that you can push, and then that will allow it to slide around and seat the flash head wherever you want it on that circular ring. Okay, so first things first, let's just move that slightly out of the way. Let's bring in our OM1 with our 30mm macro, and we're going to pop this adapter ring on the front of there. So it goes in with these clips facing backwards, looking a little bit like a spaceship. Spin it on and just finger tight. You don't need to wrench that on, because you'll be taking a set of pliers to it afterwards if you tighten it too much. And then it should look a little bit like this. Then we can take our STF-8. Now, I always recommend as well that you use rechargeable batteries in here for two reasons. One, it's better for the environment, slightly, and two, it gives you better recycle time as well on these. So rechargeable batteries, and then we're going to slide that onto the hot shoe, and very importantly, do not forget to lock it into place. Two reasons: one, you don't want it falling off halfway through the job, and two, if it's not locked in, it may well not contact all of the electronic contacts properly in there. Okay, once we've got that fitted like that, we are going to take this one, which is head B. So head B is going to slide very easily into here. It's like a cold shoe. It just slides on the front, and then the heads also can angle all the way out. Not quite sure what we'd be taking pictures of if it was all the way out, but you may use this direction if this whole unit was off camera, which it can be. Okay, so we can mount this off camera and trigger this with the little FL-LM3. It's got a little receiver there at the front that can take the optical trigger. So we're going to pop that in all the way, because we're using the 30mm, and then we're going to slide on, if I get this the right way around, head A onto this side, we're all the way into click. And if you need to release that, the release button is just underneath the head here. You will push that and slide it off. We're going to slide that back on just there and tilt all that all the way back in. So it's starting to look like a real bit of kit now. So we're going to take these diffusers, and the diffusers have a little gap for the cord lead and a little clip that secures on the front, and these tiny little pins that will seat in these little holes here. So we're just going to pop that one in there and that one in there, and that would go back, and you can see there that it quite happily holds the cord when it's open, and it clips forward when it's not. We can do the same thing to the other side. We can pop that in here and in the other side as well, and then clip that forward. So you should be looking something like this. And then obviously these will depend on what kind of look you want that light to show. And you can have them completely side by side to give some even light. You can have them all the way to one side if you want to show the direction of the sun. You can light things from below. It's going to be entirely up to you how you do that. Now, what you've also got on the back, the fantastic part about this is not only can you direct these heads around, but you've also got a dial, which is the right-hand side of the two dials, which allows you to change the power output to each head. So I can have this set to 1-1 confusingly, this is not relative to 1:1 magnification ratio. 1:1 means the same power going to both heads. And then I can go this way, and I've got 2:1, which is half power to this head, full power to the other. 4:1, 8:1, and A. So I can isolate head A and just fire from one head. And the same on the other side. It'll go 1:2, 1:4, 1:8, B, and it'll just isolate head B. Now, on the flip side of this, you have another dial which controls the power, but the first icon on here, which looks like a camera/RC, this is basically TTL. So if you want the camera and the flash to work together to give you the correct output, you'll select this one. Now, you can't use the TTL setting for stacking or bracketing, so you'll need to be in a manual power mode, which is further down the dial from full power, which is 1:1, all the way down to 1/128th power at the bottom, which is just a tiny little blip. So you can either use that as manual or TTL. Press the button, on light comes on, red charge light comes on. If this charge light flashes at you, there's a problem with the batteries. That charge light can sometimes flash, and that 99% of the time means your batteries there's something wrong with them. So they're either, if they're not rechargeables, they're done, or if they are rechargeables, they're not charged up enough, or if they have been charged, there's a circuit issue with the batteries. So always try changing them for fresh batteries if that happens. Okay, so that is your STF-8 all set up with the 30mm, and we're going to take some shots with that, and then I'll show you very quickly how we can take it off and apply it to the 60 as well. I'm just going to come back to this view here and go back through what is probably a whole ton of comments now. Gary, how is the new 90mm macro from OM1 to be used with this flash, the one that's supposed to give 4 times more zoom power? So it's 4 times magnification at 35mm equivalent, which is 2:1 on the Mag 4/3 range, and that has yet to be seen as to how that will work. So you've got to keep your eyes peeled, stay tuned, and we will have more information on that as we get it, and we'll bring it to you, of course. Okay, so lots of other questions like, will the 90mm macro work with the teleconverter? I don't know. I know as much as you, sort of, in terms of what it's going to do, but pretty much all we know is the specifications that got released and announced, and that's kind of where we'll be until we get more information. Remember, it's a development announcement, so development announcement means we're still working on it, and things that we want it to do or don't want it to do could very well change in between now and when it comes, but the bits that we've told you are the bits that we're happy with, so that's all we can give you at the moment. Hey Sharpie. Sharpie's in Rindo. Always good to see you, Alan. Fantastic stuff. Corey's absolutely right here. The 30 and the 60 both have their own purpose. If you have them both, it is very well worth using both of them for different things. Like I said, I use the 30mm for textures, and it works exceptionally well for that. Very, very close-up stuff. And the 60s, you know, for bugs, because it gives you a little bit more working distance. There you go. Corey's seen with the subject and 60mm to isolate the subject. Fantastic stuff. Let's have a look here. So Trevor's asked a great question about using focus stacking. If you're the question is there any reason to use focus stacking if you are stacking RAWs in post? Would it be best to just use focus bracketing? Do you know what? It depends on your workflow, because if you perhaps are working with a mobile workflow and you might want to post a final result real quickly while you're out in the field, then focus stacking is great because it throws you a JPEG at the end, and that's something that you can share instantly via your mobile device. You've also then got the RAWs as a backup if you need to then go back and sort of mess about a little bit and stack it in a slightly different way. It definitely depends on your own personal workflow. Okay. Oh, Sandra, screen's black. I hope it's not black anymore. Or maybe it's just a problem at your end. I hope you can see and hear me. Right, okay, here we go. Kim's question is, hi Kim, by the way. Kim read somewhere that the effective aperture is smaller than the aperture you set, which makes diffraction worse. No, apertures are apertures. It's a physical mechanism. So If you set f5.6, then your aperture is set at 5.6. Diffraction will occur when you shoot wide open or further narrow to the narrow end. So there is that kind of sweet spot in the middle, and that's about f5.6, which is what I use, generally speaking, most of the time. I use f5.6 for non-flash shots, and I use f8 for flash shots. Just because that's kind of like where I'm happy to compromise on where the image comes out. Anything over f8 for me, I just feel that diffraction is going to start to take an effect, and I don't really want that in my image. So it's a physical thing though. Okay, let's see. I'm going to leave, Terry's got a question for me. I'm going to leave it up there for just a second. So let's hook up this camera and let's go and take a picture of this feather with our STF-8, and hopefully we'll see now that no matter how close we get, we're going to be able to get some really good light in there. So there's going to be a little bit NYPD blue here for a second while I come back over and fit this camera onto the tripod. Here we go, and I'm pretty much at the same distance here. So, but what I want to do is I'm going to my flash is on. The camera knows this, so I'm going to tighten my shutter speed up. I'm going to go all the way up to 250th of a second. Now you see it's gone really dark because this is an effective view. So when I'm using flash, I'll turn on what used to be live view boost on the OMDs and is now night vision on the OM1. So we're going to hit the menus and we're going to go to the gear tab, page 3 and night vision, and I'm going to switch this on, and then this will give me an artificially lit view so that I can compose the subject a little bit better. So regardless of my exposure settings now, it's going to be nicely lit. I still do see a histogram though, which isn't really going to give me much help when I'm using flash before I take the shot anyway, but it is there if you need it. If you're not using flash but you are using night vision. There we go. So let's use autofocus here. There we go, nice and quick. That's coming beautifully, and I'm just going to take a nice simple shot of that. Now what I want you to remember about this is that we're using flash, so as much as you can see that nice blue background that I placed behind the feather now, it will look different as a result of the flash going off, and it may well even isolate completely and go very dark. So let's take that shot now. I am in TTL on the flash. There we go. So then this is the look that we've got. So the flash has managed to bounce around through to the background because the background is quite close. And then this is the nice happy quality that we've got from that in terms of sharpness. Now, of course, it's a very narrow depth of field still because we are shooting with macro. And we've got a very, very simple plain image sort of because of the light, because we've got the heads at exactly the same position on either side. Now, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to just move that feather out of the way, and I'm going to bring in a different feather. It's got slightly lighter. And I'm going to move our background a little bit further away to about there. Okay. So we're going to focus on this one. So this is a little bit further away now, just to show you that we can get that further away. And it's very quick to focus on each one. I'm going to take a shot of this one with the heads exactly where they are. And now I'm going to move head B over to the left-hand side of the ring so that it's sitting side by side with head A. And I'm going to take another shot. And then I'm going to move head B back out, and I'm going to completely isolate head A on the rear dial and take that shot as well. So these are the 3 shots that we've then got by just manipulating that light. Oh, far too bright. In different ways. Oh, here we go. Here we have a problem. The problem that I should have noticed, but I'm clearly really excited about getting myself off to the photography show, is that I've left, in fact, there may well be comments about it in the stream here, is that I've left my ISO at 3200, which is not helping that flash perform very well at all. I was confused then why my TTL flash was not registering a nice image. Let's try that again. Let's just try a single shot and see how that comes out. There we go. That's much better. So the flash has been isolated here on flash head A. Let's now bring it into, I'm going to do quarter power on B and full power on A. I'm just going to bring that to there and bring that background in a little bit more. There we go. So then this is partially using head B. and partially using head A. And we can get that nice texture from there. Obviously, this is still going to be a narrow depth of field in a single shot. We can increase this depth of field by then taking this to f8, which would be my preference with flash. So we can go to f8, take the same shot again, and we'll get a little bit more depth of field, a little bit more clarity to it. And we can see exactly what's going on in that feather there as well. And this gives you a really good idea of how that STF-8 really throws light into very close kind of areas. Oh, just checking the time. We are flying through ahead with the time here. So let's come back to here and let's see some questions. I zipped ahead with some questions just in case there was anybody shouting at me going, David, your ISO is still at 3200, which is ridiculously high using flash. Let's see what we've got in here. Ray's using a telephoto for insects like dragonflies. That's a really good idea. So the 100 to 400, the 40 to 150 Pro, the 150 to 400 if you're lucky enough as well. Really, really good idea to use those for insects as well. TC said, is there any way to use electronic shutter when using flash? Well, yeah, absolutely. You can use electronic shutter when using flash. If you've got an OMD, you'll need to go into the silent shutter settings to enable flash whilst in silent shutter settings. But once it's enabled in an OMD, you'll simply be limited to a 50th of a second, or in an OM1, you'll be limited to a 100th of a second. So perfectly possible. Okay, let's have a quick look. Bounce flash is something to like. Absolutely, yeah, you can bounce flash around. In here, we could bounce flash. If you had a bigger flash, you could bounce it off walls. You can add more diffusion if you want. So you get 2 diffusion caps with the STF-8, but you can, of course, add more diffusion with things like, a really good way to do that is sort of like with the 2mm packing foam. You can just create little arcs around them if you really want to soften that up. And then, of course, you move through different flash types. You can use different types of diffusion. So I use a hood diffuser on an FL700WR, and that creates a slightly different look as well. It is a little bit difficult to bounce light outside if you haven't got the right things with you, but you can take bounce cards and they work really well as well outside. Okay, we're going to do a couple more questions. I'll see if there's anybody. Yeah, I knew there was somebody who was going to spot that when I didn't spot it, that I was still using ISO 3200. Eagle-eyed there, Trent. Thank you. I just wish I'd been up to speed with my comments before I quite brazenly shot there at 3200 ISO with the flash. TC said, can you use SOVF instead of night LV for making the scene more visible? You can, but SOVF is only comes through the viewfinder, because it's a simulated optical viewfinder. So you can, but it will be in the viewfinder, not on the back screen. Let's have a quick look. Well, this is an interesting one. Spectrum Theatre said, sometimes with SOVF on, it seems like my EVF sort of drops frames. Maybe like a, yeah, but maybe like, does it feel like a reduced frame rate? Maybe. It's an interesting one. I'll have a little dig around that. I'm not quite sure what that could be, but let me have a dig around. And if I find out anything, I'll put something in the comments of this video when it's all published and not live. Let's have a quick look. So, Peter, there are some, you want some resources on OM Macro with the 60mm. We have some really, really great macro ambassadors. So if you go across to our website, you'll see the ambassadors that we work with. Over on My Olympus, there's some really, really good resources as well. There are some more videos on the YouTube channel that you're on now as well. So I would say between YouTube, our channel, and the ambassador page on My Olympus, those are some great places to start with resources for OM Macro with the 60. Okay. Hi. Okay, Luke, send me a message later on, and then I will deal with what's going on with your drop frames, and we'll see if we can dig around and work it out together. Biggie Z, thanks for joining us. Is there a diffuser on the STF-8? There are 2 diffusion caps that sit over the front of each head on those, and they're made of a white plastic that diffuses the light. Now, of course, you can add other diffusion as well. You do have to be careful with close flash and close diffusion on hotspots on seriously reflective surfaces. So do think about that if you're taking shots of sort of metallic beetles and things like that. You get a bit more distance with the 60mm, which is probably what you're using for metallic beetles anyway, but you do have to be aware of it. But yes, you do get the 2 diffusers on the heads. Okay. Oh, this is great. Don, hi Don. I remember, yes, last month we did the AF presentation and you asked if dog and cat AF detection would work with bears. And I said, don't depend on it because it's not bear detection. But you went to Alaska, photographed grizzly bears and it worked well. That's really good to know. That's really nice to hear. As always with the AF, if it's dog and cat, I did say in the last presentation, don't count on it working with other things, but we are hearing more and more that subject detection is working on lots of different mammals. So that's really, really good feedback. Thanks, Don. And I hope you had a great time in Alaska. Okay, so now if you are in the UK and you can make it, the UK Photography Show is going on this weekend. It will be open from Saturday, Sunday. It will be closed on Monday as a sign of respect to the funeral here in the UK for the Queen, and then back open again on Tuesday. All of the UK team, plus hopefully some special people from our European team, will be with us as well. If you can make it, come along and say hi, come along and see us. We'll be there, and we will definitely want to see some of your friendly faces. But for now, I'm going to have to sign off. As always, the time on these sessions goes exceptionally quick. I will be back hopefully for another Tech Thursday and maybe some other things as well as we go through into October, November. Wow, we are really plowing through the year. But remember, if you need anything at all, if you need any tech help, if you need any support, then reach out to whoever is in your region. And if there is nobody in your region, then you are more than welcome to reach out to me, send comments on our YouTube, and get in touch with us via social media. That is probably the quickest way. But as always, it's been fantastic. Thank you so much for all sitting through, watching, listening, and taking part. And then hopefully I'll see all of you and more again on the next Tech Thursday. But for now, stay safe and bye-bye.